Hello, I'm Rick Stivers with YoungMartin'sReels, and tonight we're going to be working on this Langley Streamlite Model 310. We're changing things up a little bit today. I've decided to try a new camera angle and see if it's going to work better for us. And so we're doing a very simple reel, something that shouldn't take long, so that if I do mess it up, we haven't lost all that much. So we're going to start off with this reel and see how far it takes us. All right, so here we go. I'm going to start off by taking the handle off. There we go. 10 millimeter, and slip the handle off. That's going to bring us down to these 3 screws. And with those off, we should be able to take the side cover off. There we go. And let's get this out of the picture. All right, with that done, we can now remove the spool out of the reel. And that brings us down to this side case here. We're going to zoom in a little bit on that. All right, now with it zoomed in, you can see that what we've got is a bushing on this end, and then we've got the clicker on here. And I know that doesn't sound like a very technical term, but that's pretty much what it is. It's a clicker pawl. On the side, there's a switch right here that switches this in and out. Well, as that switches in and out, it takes that clicker and pushes it into the cog and out of the cog. All right, so we look, everything in there looks pretty good. We're going to do a quick wipe out just to clean it out good. And this reel was just recently cleaned, so we shouldn't end up with a whole lot of dirt and debris in here. Next thing we're going to do is put a little bit of grease on the clicker assembly. Right here on the sides where the spring action rides on that, it can wear into that, and right on the very tip of the clicker it can wear. So that's why we lubricate that. And we're going to put a drop of reel oil down inside the bushing assembly. With that done, we can set it over to the side and move over to the spool. Now this spool, if anybody was going to actually take it out and fish with it, is definitely going to need to be cleaned up and the line changed out on it. We are, however, kind of like this old antique line on it, and so we're planning to leave it there. And we're going to clean up the gear on the end of the spool and inspect it to make sure that there's no damage to the teeth on this pinion gear. Once that's done, wipe it off, come back, add a little grease to the teeth of the gear, add a drop of oil to the shaft, spin it around to the other side, and this is where we've got our clicker cog. That's the one that clicker point is going to be riding in. Let's clean that up a little bit. Wipe it off. Add a little grease to the cog. And then a drop of oil to the shaft. Now that spool's ready to go, we'll set it over to the side. So that's got the housing cleaned up. Oh, I'm sorry, let's back up on the housing, because we have the worm gear to worry about. And notice that it turns and it comes right in and out. We're going to slide it out, but what we want to do is we want to take this pawl out on the worm gear. Wow, this camera action is going to take some getting used to. Let's turn it around this way. See if that gets us better action. All right, there we go. That's a good position that we can see in. Get the larger screwdriver. There we go. unscrew the cap off of the pawl. And now if this happens to be a magnetic pawl, we'll pull it right out with this. And it's not. It's it appears to be a stainless pawl. So we'll grab hold of it and see if we can get it to slide out. Alright, now that pawl gave me a lot of grief coming out, and I think it's because it might be a little bit bent on the end. We'll check it out, clean it up. Okay, with the pawl removed, I was able to clean it up and look at it. It looks very good, actually. I'm not real sure why I had so much trouble getting it out of the hole, but it did come out. Now we can take the worm gear out and we'll spray it down and scrub it. Okay, the worm gear is clean and shiny along with the pawl. The only thing left there now is to clean out the channel that the worm gear rides in, and that the pawl goes up inside. Okay, this worm gear and pawl are a little bit different from any that I've seen before. The pawl won't go directly in. Most of them you can just slide it, orient the pawl in the correct orientation and just slide it in. In this one, it doesn't do that. You have to take the pawl, slide it down and rotate it 90 degrees to get it to drop down. Then once it's dropped down, then you can start to rotate it until you get it to drop into the slot. Alright, now you've got the frame cleaned, the worm gear clean, the pawl clean, and the cap clean. Now, I'm going to suggest that we leave the pawl out until after we cleaned up the side, and we put the worm gear back in with the side plate so that it can rotate and be able to move this shaft to allow us to orient that the pawl into the worm gear. All right, so the next thing we're going to do is take out these two screws. Push the gear assembly down. It pops out. That gives us a side case. In the side case, there's a little bit of grease. We'll wipe that out. We're going to clean the end of the bushing with a cotton swab. Clean any dirt out of there. Then come back, add a couple of drops of oil to that bushing. That's going to bring us over here to the main gear. Main gear comes off. This is really a pretty simple setup. You've got your gear sleeve, your main shaft, your bridge assembly, and your gear for the worm gear. Let's clean this up quickly. Inspect the teeth. Inspect your gear sleeve. Make sure all the teeth on that are good. Inspect your post and wipe it down. Add some grease to the post. And, well, let's go ahead and clean out the inside of the gear sleeve. There we go. Make sure it's clean inside. Now slide it back on to the gear sleeve post. Make sure it meshes with this gear. Slide your main gear back into place. Make sure that it falls onto the keyway on the post. Now it's time to grease all these gears. You've already inspected them to make sure that all the teeth are good. Install the side plate back onto the shaft, slide it around, line the holes up, and you'll see that those little stobs will drop into the holes. And now put your 2 screws back in for your bridge. Go back to your main frame assembly and install your spool back into the frame. Slide it down inside, make sure it engages into the hole. There we go, into the bushing. Activate your clicker. Make sure it clicks. And it does. Turn it back off. Take your spool gear now. Lubricate it. Slide it back into the channel. All the way down. Then you've got this keyway here on the gear. This is the gear that meshes to your worm gear. Line it up and set it into place. Make sure that it goes over the center of the worm gear, and then rotate the shaft until you can see your worm gear rotate. Once you've got that done, you can come back and install these 3 screws. Get all 3 screws started before you tighten any of them all the way down. With that done, it's time to come back, orient your carrier, and this is where it's different for this spool and most others that I've ever seen. When this one goes in, normally you want the prongs of this facing up and down. What's going to happen if you try to put it in that way is it won't go. So take it and turn it 90 degrees from that, and it helps if you've got something small or something like needle nose to hold it with. Stick it in 90 degrees opposed to these. Don't try to line it up yet. It has to go in opposed. Once it goes in so far, then attempt to rotate it. And then it should drop into its slot. Once it drops into its slot, then it'll start moving up and down the shaft. Once that has happened, then you can come back and put your cap on. Make sure not to cross thread it. And I would go ahead and flood the channel once more with oil. Once you've got it over to one side, take and grease this channel right here. You don't want to put a lot of grease in there. Matter of fact, what we're going to do is we're going to wipe almost all of it back off once we put it on there. Just get the grease down into the channel. Once it's done that, then wipe it off of the rest of the post so that you don't have a big greasy mess. Okay, and if you loosen the end there, now I have said this in nearly every single baitcaster video that I've ever made so far, and that hasn't been that many, but it's been a fair amount. I think it's been 5 or 6. But when you put the spool back in, make sure that your line is not trapped inside the frame. The line was trapped in the spool when I put it in. I had to pull it out. I wasn't paying attention. I always make some kind of mistake, and any of you watching my videos know that that's true. That was basically what people had to fish with from around the turn of the 1900s all the way up until the late 1940s for the most part. Most people fished with this right here, or something very similar to it. It's a very simple reel. It isn't a whole lot of fun and easy to cast with. It's really great if you're fishing off of a boat down deep, looking for catfish. It's a great way to get your knuckles busted because there is no drag and this thing pops loose and those handles will come around and smack you in the hand. And anyway, let's go ahead and add a little grease, a little oil to each of these. Help keep them free flowing. I don't know how many of these reels I've seen over the years that these knobs won't turn anymore because somebody didn't take care of them, didn't lubricate them. And once they get corroded up inside, it's very hard to deal with. Anyway, if you like this video, hit the like button. If you didn't like it, you can go ahead and hit the dislike button. Biggest thing I'm looking for though, folks, is to tell me what you think. We're going to go ahead and load this one up, get it packed up. It's ready to go fishing and ready to take on another lifetime of fun. This is Rick Stivers with Young Martin's Reels. Thank you for watching.